प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. So we'll start the discussion. We have been discussing from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, first chapter. So we saw Dhritarashtra wants to know what exactly happened on the battlefield, and Sanjay is narrating to him that how Duryodhana approached Dronacharya and in one sense sort of criticized him and then glorified the opponent's army, Pandava army, and then he sort of, in order to encourage him, he glorified his own army and Bhishma Dev and everyone. And at that point of time, Bhishma blew the conch shell and everyone else blew the conch shell, and hearing that, the hearts of the Kauravas became, it got shattered. And at that point of time, Arjuna asked Krishna to take the chariot. Senayor ubayor madhye ratam stapayame achyuta yavadetan niriksheham yoddu kaman avastitan. Like that he says. I would like to see who are those people who have assembled to fight with us by taking the side of the evil-minded Duryodhana. Dhartarashtrasya durbuddher yuddhe priyachikirsavaha. Like that. And then at that point of time, Krishna takes the chariot right in front of Bhishma and Drona in order to invoke the maximum kind of emotions from Arjuna's heart. And at that point of time, Arjuna starts panicking. And then we saw he presents his doubts, various reasons for not fighting. The first that he mentions is compassion, right? We saw this. Drishtveman swajanan Krishna yuyutsum samupastitam सीदंती मम गात्राणि मुखं च परिशुष्यति वेपतुश्च शरीरे मे रोमहर्षश्च जायते गांडीवं स्रंशते हस्तात् वक्षैव परिदह्यते. So he says that my dear Krishna, drishtva iman swajanan, seeing all my relatives who have gathered here to fight with me, yuyutsum samupastitam sidanti mama gatrani, actually my limbs are completely becoming weak. Mukam cha parishushyati, my mouth is drying up. Vepatuscha sharire me, my body is trembling. Roma harshascha jayate, my hairs are standing on end. Gandivam sramshate hastat, and my gandiva is slipping from my hand. Tvakchaiva paridahyate, my skin is literally burning. So these are all symptoms of, in one sense, deep emotional affliction. So he was completely, emotionally, he was getting very much affected. And at that point of time, he says, Nacha shaknomi avastatum brahmati vachame manah nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. In fact, I'm not able to stand, and my mind is completely whirling, and I don't see any auspicious result coming out of this battle. If I fight this battle, I don't think there is anything auspicious that is going to come up, right? So so this was the first reason, compassion. And then he gives the reason of enjoyment. I will not be able to enjoy, right? Nacha shreyo nu pashyami hatva swajanamahave nakangshe vijayam Krishna racharajyam sukanicha. I do not see any good result hatva swajanamahave, after killing my own people on the battlefield. I don't think, I see any good result. Nakangshe vijayam Krishna nacharajyam sukanicha. I don't even desire victory, Krishna, because, and not happiness and not even the kingdom, because After killing my own relatives, with whom am I going to enjoy the kingdom, right? So it is like uh, someone wants to play, let's say, Ludo or something like that, a board game, and you are fighting with those people to get that Ludo, uh, with whom you want to fight that, with whom you want to play that Ludo game. So if you fight with your friend and snatch that Ludo from his hands, and out of anger he leaves, then the whole purpose of taking that Ludo is lost, because with whom are we going to play that Ludo? Like, I'm just giving an example. I'm not able to think of anything other than this. So that's the point that he's telling, that I may get the kingdom, I may get some happiness, I may get the victory, but with whom am I going to enjoy that victory? So I will not get enjoyment. That is the point that he's indicating here. And in this context, we were discussing last time the the various processes: Sakama Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So we were discussing what is the practice that is involved, then what is the goal, and what does one gain by practice of Varnashrama in that particular process, and what does one lose by neglecting to perform the Varnashrama, right? So this is something that we discussed last time. So and then we did discuss, Shyam Mohan Prabhu raised this point about why shouldn't I practice Nishkama Karma Yoga, because it seems like there is destruction of false ego there, but in Bhakti Yoga there is no much focus on change of false ego. This is the last discussion I think we had, and some discussions, but I think this is where we ended. But I'm not very sure if in that discussion, I think Shyam Mohan Prabhu still had some doubts. I think I think I told that we will discuss it in future class, but somewhere there, Shyam Mohan Prabhu, you remember where we left, and where should we start? Any idea?
You had said, Prabhuji, that you would discuss about Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga ka differences, I think. But I'm not
Okay.
very sure that what the real context was.
I mean, I remember you did ask that, uh, you said that I feel, if we first practice Nishkama Karma Yoga, then the
No,
false ego would be
dealt
dissolved,
with
and then,
first, yeah. And
yeah.
then I would
So,
feel that I would be a little more qualified to practice Bhakti to Krishna's pleasure or satisfaction in a better manner.
okay. So, I mean, of course, this is in one sense not in line with the conclusions of our Bhakti scriptures. For that, we need to, because I think that day you were dropping me in to
Chari Prabhu's place.
Chari Prabhu's place. You remember you quoted some verses,
Yes, yes,
two
yes.
verses. Which are the verses you remember?
Uh, just give me 1 minute, Prabhuji. I'll fetch it soon.
Yeah, one thing was um, Yadapashraya Shuddhanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha.
Yeah,
Kirata
that was
Hunandra
Kirata
Pulinda
Hunandra
Pulkasha.
Pulinda Pulkasha. Yes.
Interestingly, you quoted that verse because none of those people are followers of Varnashrama.
Yeah, all of them are outside the Varnashram.
All of them are outside Varnashrama. Kirata
Yes.
Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abira Shumba Yavanaha Kasadaya. Yenyecha Papa. In fact, they are all dedicated to living a life of sin. What to speak of practicing the Nishkama Karma Yoga. Yenye cha papa yadapashraya shuddyanti tasmai prabha Vishnave namaha. So the point is that surrender is surrendering to a devotee and surrendering to Krishna. They are not dependent on any other external qualification. It is not dependent on any of these other practices. In fact, it can actually complicate things in one sense, because we have an alternative value system. Because for those practicing proper Nishkama Karma Yoga means they will be practicing the Karma Shastras. So there will be attachment to Karma Shastras. So from transit, when you transit from Karma Shastra to Bhakti Shastra, it is very difficult to give up, because already you have been attached to doing certain things. Do's and don'ts, do's and don'ts, do's and don'ts. You are already attached to do's and don'ts. And to completely change it and accepting the do's and don'ts of Bhakti Shastras, which may be contrary to the do's and don'ts of the Karma Shastras, one will find it very difficult actually. So one can potentially find it difficult. So it is, in one sense, it's not really a very great advantage, especially on the platform that you're talking about as, in terms of dealing with the false ego. I don't really think it would be a great advantage. Is that relevant? I don't know if it's answering your question.
Yeah, Prabhuji, because what you said made sense. Because if one gets attached to the Karma Shastras and all of that, then to transit here will be a little difficult. So I realize that is going to be a practical difficulty.
See, actually, no, Prabhu, but you brought out a good point. I will discuss this two things. So what are the, let's say if there is a there are, for progressing in bhakti, okay, there could be two obstacles. Okay, one obstacle is a contaminated swabhava. Okay, and the second obstacle is a contaminated shraddha, faith. Okay, so for a person who practices Nishkama Karma Yoga, what happens is his swabhava becomes purified. So there is less and less material desires. But what happens is that, so swabhava is purified in the sense material desires are purified. But what happens is that he becomes strongly attached to mukti. Okay, it becomes a strong attachment to bhukti, and there is strong attachment to rituals. Okay, then there is strong attachment to Karma Shastras. Okay, so now when he yeah, I also said I will discuss yoga ladder. I will discuss that. So the problem with when someone is transitioning to bhakti from either Nishkama Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, is even though there is a significant Swabhava Shuddhikaran, material desires will be very minimal. But the problem is that the faith will become very much contaminated. Because otherwise, for a materialistic person, he's like a clean slate when it comes to faith. For him, whatever he likes, he accepts. Whatever he dislikes, he rejects it. There is no strong value system in terms of this is right, that is wrong, and all those things. So in that sense, actually, if you see from the faith point of view, he has a very moldable faith, because he's not anyway attached to any of the Shastras. But when someone is transitioning from a proper Vedic path to the path of Bhakti, then the obstacle comes in the form of a pre-existing Vedic faith, which is not necessarily pure devotional faith. Right? It is, and there is a strong sense of value system. This is right, this is wrong. This is right, this is wrong. I should do this, I should not do this. And in terms of Shastras only, which he has been following for years or decades together. And suddenly he has to change it now. It becomes a great obstacle actually. But in terms of Rajogun and influence of Rajogun and Tamogun, that is very significantly subdued. So it is like in one sense, it's not like there is advantage from one side and there is disadvantage from the other side. So it is not going to be a very straightforward thing. It's going to be a struggle. Like you may know the story. It's not a story. It's just Prabhupada tells this sort of story to make a point. So Prabhupada said that once someone goes to a Mridanga teacher and he says, I want to learn Mridanga. And the teacher asks, okay, how much Mridanga do you already know? He says, yeah, I already know Mridanga. I have been playing in Kirtans for the last 10 years. So reasonably good. I want to learn more. And I want to learn more systematically. So even though I know how to play in Kirtans, I have been playing for a long time, but systematically I have never learned Mridanga. So I want to learn. Okay. Yeah, he said, I'll teach you. And he says, how much time it will take and how much money I have to pay? He said, it will take me 2 years to teach you and you have to pay me 20,000 rupees. So he said, okay. Then before he left, actually another boy came and he said, I want to learn Mridanga. And he said, fine, yeah, I can teach you. How much do you already know? And he said, I don't know anything. So then he said, okay, I'll teach you. How much time? How much money? He said, it will take you 1 year. I will teach you Mridanga in 1 year and you can give me 10,000 rupees. The first person was shocked completely. Here is one person who has never played a Mridanga. For him, 1 year and 10,000, and I have already been playing for 10 years now. And he is telling me 2 years and 20,000. So this didn't make any sense. So he asked the teacher, what is this? This seems very unfair. And the teacher said, look, the first 1 year and 10,000 rupees is to make you forget what you have already learnt in an improper way. And the next 1 year is to actually teach you proper playing of Mridanga. So that's why 20,000 for you, 10,000 for him. So the problem of a person transitioning from either Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga to Bhakti Yoga, the problem is actually with faith actually. He already has a pre-existing Vedic faith, which is not pure devotional. That is a big problem actually. And in fact, it is a big problem in today's day and age, even in the currently existing ISKCON setup actually. Some people are carrying that pre-existing Vedic faith, and due to sustained connection with other organizations and other things like that, they bring in that pre-existing non-pure devotional faith into Krishna consciousness, and they very actively start preaching it also. So rather than taking inspiration and guidance from Srila Prabhupada, one's own Guru Maharaj, and the books written by Prabhupada and our acharyas, they carry over their pre-existing non-pure devotional but Vedic value system and start preaching things which are not necessarily conducive for pure devotional service. And it creates havoc actually. It confuses people to such an extent actually. People don't know what is right, what is wrong. They're completely confused. So therefore, in one sense, actually, it's not like a very significant edge, you can say. There is always a flip side to it. When in terms of swabhava, one may, anartha nivritti will be very fast for such people. But then for them to gain that strong faith in bhakti will become very difficult. As I was sharing the other day with you, that growing up in a Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya and having, which is actually a very bona fide Sampradaya, for me, it took me years to actually invest some faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Godhead. For me, I had absolutely no problem accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I had all the while grown up accepting Krishna. But for me to accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord, to really internalize it, it took me years and years actually. It was very difficult. But you see, people in the West, for them, it is one, even though you may say that they didn't grow up in a Vedic a Vedic household, they had many bad habits and things like that. But for them to accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very easy, right? So that is the point. Actually, it's not in one sense. It's not in one sense very straightforward like we think. Is that relevant, bro? Shamon?
Yes, Prabhuji, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And I did say that I will speak about the yoga ladder. This is a very important concept. Now, I want you to participate. I will, so keep your fingers near the mute and unmute button. And as and when I ask you, kindly please, if you know or if you want to guess also, you can please go ahead and guess. So now we are going to understand what is this yoga ladder. Okay. I am pretty sure practically almost all of you are already Bhakti Shastris. Now I want you to share what is your understanding of yoga ladder. Whatever little you know, it need not be correct, wrong. Yes, Mataji, go ahead. Mataji.
Gradual elevation to the Bhakti Yoga, from Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and then Bhakti Yoga. Gradual elevation is yoga ladder.
Okay. Okay. So what comes first, Mataji?
Sakam Karma Yoga.
Okay. Sakama Karma Yoga. And then?
Then Nishkam Karma Yoga.
Yeah, and then Nishkam Karma Yoga, and then?
Then Jnana Yoga.
Okay. And then?
Then Ashtanga Yoga.
Okay. And then?
Then Bhakti Yoga.
Okay. So which means for one who has reached till Ashtanga Yoga, it is easiest for them to take up to Bhakti Yoga. Is that what you mean? So one who is...
I don't know, Prabhuji, maybe it will facilitate these people to go to Bhakti Yoga. Means it may be easy for them to accept Bhakti Yoga.
So you mean to say it is easier for them to accept Bhakti Yoga?
Maybe, I don't know.
So before Sakama Karma Yogi, who will come? A materialist will come, right?
Materialist, yes, materialist.
Correct?
Materialist.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So materialist, when he accepts the Vedic teachings, he will become a Sakama Karma Yogi. Then gradually he will become Nishkama Karma Yogi, then Jnana
Verified,
Yogi,
huh?
Ashtanga Yogi, and Bhakti Yogi. So you mean to say that for a materialist, it will be the most difficult to accept Bhakti Yoga, and for an Ashtanga Yogi, it will be easiest to accept Bhakti Yoga, right?
It is not like that, Prabhuji. I think a yoga letter has the other part also, that it is direct elevator also. There is a direct elevator that a materialist can become a bhakti yogi directly, maybe because of his agyat sukruti and all.
Okay, okay, fine. Thank you, Mataji. Yes, Shamlal Prabhu, or Shammohan Prabhu, one of you anyway. You can go ahead.
Prabhuji, it is not a single ladder, I think, but you had explained in your Rediscovering Vedi Sadhana Bhakti series that there is the Varnashram disc, and there are 3 things on the outside, which are like Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga. And then there's a concentric disc inside, which is Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Bhakti, and Yoga Mishra Bhakti. And then there is a pure Bhakti inside. So then these people, they start from their places and then they progress towards Bhakti with an intervening stage of a Mishra Bhakti. So that is the yoga progression instead of a yoga ladder.
Okay. You mean to say those who are practicing Karma Yoga, they will come to Karma Mishra Bhakti, and they will practice pure devotional service. And those who are practicing Jnana Yoga will practice Jnana Mishra Bhakti, and then will come to pure devotional service. And those who are practicing Ashtanga Yoga will come to Yoga Mishra Bhakti, and then they will come to pure devotional service. You mean to say that is the progression?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Yes, Shamlal Prabhu, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I also had the same understanding. Like when we read about Kardam Muni in Bhagavatam, Kardam Muni used to do severe austerities, tapasya, meditating on the Lord, and then in the end, finally he's seeing Lord Vishnu, and then he asked Lord Vishnu for getting married to a wife. And after a married life, and after Kapila Dev is born, then he again leaves, and then he takes up to, as my understanding is, he takes up to pure devotional service. So it's like, as you said, Ashtanga Yoga, then or Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, then it becomes Mishrit with Bhakti, and then it is pure devotional service. This is what I understood from the whole thing.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Anyone else would like to share your understanding of what do you think is yoga ladder? Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna Prabhuji, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that it's a ladder of spiritual development, and it starts by Karma Yoga. Then we have Nishkam Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga.
Okay.
And for Karma Yoga, it's like a fruity worker. We are working just to get for maybe sense gratification, but still according to the scriptures, we are not going against we're not doing vikarma, and and then the second stage is we are renouncing our foods.
We
Nishkam Karma
understand,
Yoga.
Mataji. Yeah. What is Nishkam Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga? That's fine. But the same thing, right? What is written here, Sakama Karma Yoga to Nishkam Karma Yoga, then Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, right?
Yeah, because this thing is still a bit, I'm not clear. This is what my understanding is.
Okay.
And it is a gradual progress, like for spiritual development.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So now, let us try to understand where this yoga ladder concept comes from. This is a very important thing. See, I am going to speak about certain concepts which will come in the 3rd chapter, 4th chapter, 5th chapter, 6th chapter. But clarifying them here only, so that when we go ahead, you know, it will become little more clearer. So now here we should understand that there are the way Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this concepts or the first 6 chapters, and the way Baldev Vidyabhushan describes the first 6 chapter, especially, it's quite different. Okay, so now I want you to, if you see this Sakama Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Now, if you see, these can be these things actually can be, in one sense, individual paths, or these things can be various limbs of one path. Okay, I will explain to you what it means. Okay, so now there is, if you see, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, he talks about there are 2 kinds of Vedic practitioners. Okay, so the 2 kinds of Vedic practitioners are pure devotee and a gradual mixed. Okay, so he calls this gradual mixed devotee as Sanishta Bhakta. And he says that the pure devotees are of 2 types: Parinishtita and Nirapeksha. Okay, so first let's try to understand what is this Sanishta Bhakta. So he says the Sanishta Bhakta is the gradual devotee, gradual mixed devotee. And what is his goal? His goal is liberation. Okay, how does he accomplish it? He says, step 1, the first rung of the ladder is he practices Sakama Karma Yoga. For what purpose? Sakama Karma Yoga for gaining piety. And then when he practices Sakama Karma Yoga, before that he was a materialist, right? Step 0. Step 0, he was a materialist. He was trying to enjoy whimsically. Then gradually he comes to the stage of Sakama Karma Yoga, where he accepts some the Vedic path to enjoy. His goal is still to enjoy only, but he is willing to subordinate his desires of enjoyment by trying to enjoy through the guidance of the Shastras. Okay. Then, because of accepting the Vedic path and following that Vedic path of Varnashrama, gradually some purification in the heart happens, and gradually his material desires start becoming weaker and weaker, and he starts developing some attraction towards liberation. So at that point of time, he practices Nishkama Karma Yoga. For what purpose? for purification of heart. Okay. So then when the heart becomes purified, then he becomes qualified to practice Jnana Yoga. For what? For self-realization. Realizing the self. So when the self is realized, then he comes to the next path, which is Ashtanga Yoga, for Paramatma realization. Okay. And then when the Paramatma is realized, the next step is liberation. Okay. So this is Sayujya Mukti, impersonal liberation. Okay. So now, if you see here, this Sakama Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga are just various levels of one process only. They are all limbs of the same process. Okay. They are all limbs of one path. Okay. This is according to Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan's explanation. This is also correct. Because if you see Kapiladev's description of Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the practice itself has in the initial stages Karma Yoga, Sakama and Nishkama Karma Yoga, and in the later stages, whether it is description of Ashtanga Yoga, it has some elements of Jnana Yoga also, or if it is description of Jnana Yoga, it has some elements of Ashtanga Yoga also. So what and for either Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, Sakama Karma Yoga and Nishkama Karma Yoga is a prerequisite, right? So now this is how he explains that the first 6 chapters, what is described in the 6th chapter as Ashtanga Yoga, and what is described as in the 5th chapter as Jnana Yoga, and what is described in the 3rd and 4th chapters as Karma Yoga is the Sakama and Nishkama Karma Yoga. So these are all various steps of the same practitioner. This is according to Baldev Vidyabhushan's explanation. Okay, this is the Sanishta Bhakta. And then who is this Parinishtita Bhakta? So this Parinishtita Bhakta is a pure devotional sadhaka. Okay, so and he may have to perform some varnashrama duties to set the right example for others. Okay, so this is a Parinishtita Sadhaka. The Parinishtita Bhakta is a pure devotional sadhaka, and a Nirapeksha Bhakta is a pure devotional Siddha, perfected devotee, one who is at the stage of Bhava or Prema. So he is at that stage. For him, because he is so absorbed in spontaneous devotional service, he does not perform varnashram duties because he is so absorbed. So this is Nirapeksha Bhakta. Okay. So in this way, Baldev Vidyabhushan explains that the whole Bhagavad Gita is describing the path or the duties of either a Sanishta Bhakta or a Parinishtita Bhakta or a Nirapeksha Bhakta. So the first 6 chapters, especially he says, talks about Sanishta Bhakta. So how he gradually moves from Sakama Karma Yoga to Nishkama Karma Yoga to Jnana Yoga to Ashtanga Yoga to liberation, Sayujya Mukti. So this is where you get this yoga ladder understanding. So this yoga ladder understanding is given by Baldev Vidyabhushan. And in that yoga ladder, there is no Bhakti Yoga. contrary to our understanding, there is no Bhakti Yoga in that Yoga ladder understanding. Okay, so this is the explanation by Baldev Vidyabhushan. Okay, so but whether one is at step 0 or step 1 or step 2 or step 3 or step 4, whatever step one may be, if they come in touch with a pure devotee, then they can directly take up to Bhakti Yoga. That is the understanding. So it does not depend on whether one is situated, a person who is situated at the step 4, he is very favorable to accept Bhakti. Step 3, he is little less favorable. Step 2, even less favorable. It's not like that. Because ultimately, how you take up to Bhakti depends on your Agyata Sukriti only, Bhaktionmukhi Sukriti. And engagement in any of these Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga does not give any Bhaktionmukhi Sukriti. Only association of devotees is capable of giving Bhaktionmukhi Sukriti. And devotees are not very devotees are not thinking that, "Arey, ye to acha karma yogi hai, I should go and give him bhakti. Arey, ye to acha ashtang yogi hai, isko to aur bhi dena chahiye. Arey, ye to kali materialist hai, isko to main dunga hi nahi." So the devotees don't think like that, right? Therefore, to say that an ashtanga yogi is more prone or more favorable to accept bhakti than a materialist, or a Jnana yogi is more favorable to take up to bhakti than a materialist, is not the right understanding. It is, then how would bhakti become ahaituki? That is not the correct understanding. Anyway, this is the explanation of Baldev Vidyabhushan as to how the first 6 chapters flow. Now, let me add one more slide. So now let's see how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this whole thing. So while, as I mentioned, while these paths could be limbs of one path, or they could be individual paths also, some of them. So this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation. So according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation, he says so one starts with Sakama Karma Yoga. Okay. Then one comes to Nishkama Karma Yoga. Sakama Karma Yoga for a pious life. Nishkama Karma Yoga for purification of heart. And once the heart becomes purified, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has 3 choices. Either he can continue to practice Nishkama Karma Yoga and still attain liberation, or he can practice Jnana Yoga and then through that attain liberation, or he can practice Ashtanga Yoga and attain liberation. Okay. So this is his explanation. So these 3 are 3 independent paths according to, of course, they are like 3 independent paths according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And of course, they can be limbs of the same path also, but he is not talking about them being limbs. He is describing them to be independent paths, each capable of giving liberation. So in that case, we should understand Jnana Yoga, before Jnana Yoga, Sakama Karma Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga is there. And this practice of Jnana Yoga has elements of Ashtanga Yoga also. And this Ashtanga Yoga is preceded by Sakama Karma Yoga and Nishkama Karma Yoga. And this has elements of Jnana Yoga also. And this Nishkama Karma Yoga has elements of Ashtanga Yoga and Jnana Yoga. But so the difference being the predominance. Here, he does not give up the practice of Varnashrama. Along with Varnashrama, some few elements of Ashtanga Yoga and Jnana Yoga he practices. So this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation. From Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation, there is no there is nothing called yoga ladder as such. It does not come out that clearly from his explanation. There is no explanation of yoga ladder, and we should understand that this is in this yoga ladder there is no bhakti yoga, because ladder means the previous rung should naturally lead to the higher rung. But in the case of this thing, in bhakti yoga is not a natural progression for a practitioner. So one who practices Ashtanga yoga naturally will not move towards bhakti yoga. That is not the right understanding. That is why it's improper to say that one who practices Nishkama Karma Yoga or one who is coming from a Vedic background, he has a great advantage to practice Bhakti Yoga. If someone says like that, this is not accepted by the conclusions of the Shastra. This is not right actually. So therefore, if someone says that Indian most prone to accept Bhakti Yoga than practitioners, than those coming from other countries, this is not true in one sense, because this Kirata, Hona, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, these are all actually in one sense, they are not within the Varnashram system. So this is something that we need to understand, that this is something that I wanted to explain about the yoga ladder. The reason being, so therefore one should not say that naturally because in the yoga ladder Nishkama Karma Yoga comes before Bhakti Yoga, therefore one who practices Nishkama Karma Yoga only he will be very very capable of practicing Bhakti Yoga. That is not true actually in one sense. This is not supported by the conclusions of the Bhakti Shastras. Yeah, this is something that I wanted to just add. Any quick comments, discussion points before we move ahead? Yes, Shamohan Prabhu.
Prabhuji, this shloka Kirat Hunandra Pulinda is 2.4.18, and just one shloka before that, 2.4.17, is also what we discussed the other day on your way back. This is Tapasvino Danapara Yashasvino Manasvino Mantra Vida Sumangalaha Shemam na Vindanti Vinayadarpanam Tasmai Subhadra Shavase Namo Namah.
Correct.
Here, Prabhuji, the third line, Shemam na Vindanti Vinayadarpanam. So does it mean that all of these different paths that you have explained, and then all the Jnana Yogis, Ashtanga Yogis, they are also getting liberation finally. So this shloka says that nobody of all these Tapasvi, Yashasvi, Manasvi, Mantra Vida, Sumangala, none of these categories will gain anything if they don't Vinayadarpanam, if they don't offer to that Supreme Lord something, their faith or their
what it means is
Shraddha.
Vinayadarpanam means if they don't worship the Supreme Lord, then they cannot achieve perfection. That's what it means.
So is there element of, my question is there element of bhakti in all of these paths? The process that they are offering something to the Supreme Lord or worshipping the Lord in one of his three different aspects. Brahma, Paramatma. Is there an element of bhakti, can we say, in all of these paths?
Actually, they have to have an element of bhakti, because ultimately it is the element of bhakti which is the active ingredient. Okay. Tell in doctor's language, you have the paracetamol tablet, right? So in paracetamol tablet, you have the active ingredient is paracetamol. And you also have a base. The tablet has a base, right? What is that? Some talc and things like that. What is that base made of? Anyone? Any idea?
Incipients, they are called, I think, or some carrier. I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, it is. It has some talc and a few other things, I think, the base material. So ultimately the karma jnana yoga is all like that that empty tablets which does not have that active ingredient. but when the real active ingredient is bhakti. So that is why when bhakti alone is performed, the goal of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and ashtanga yoga can be attained, right? So what is karma yoga? Karma yoga is karma plus the element of bhakti. Okay, that gives so karma plus bhakti gives result, let's say 1. But if you see, bhakti alone can give that same result also, 1. Okay, what is that verse? Akama sarvakamo va mokshakama udaradihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajesam param. Whether you have an akama, you have no material desires, sarvakama, you have all material desires, or mokshakama, you have desire for liberation. If you perform tivra bhakti, you can achieve the same result. Or as Krishna says to Uddhava in the 11th canto, yat karmabir yat tapasa jnana vairagyatascha yogena dana dharmena shreyobir itarairapi sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakta labate anjasa swarga apavarga maddama katanchid yadi vanchati. He says that yat karmabir, what can be achieved, whatever can be achieved by karma, jnana, yoga, etc., can be achieved by my devotee just by practicing bhakti yoga. So now, if you see here, karma plus bhakti gives the result, which is 1, let's say. And bhakti alone can give the same result, which is 1, which means K equals, what is the value of K?
0.
0. Okay. Similarly, the same thing, the jnana, what we call as jnana yoga, has the element of bhakti. Let's say it gives, the result is 2. But bhakti alone is capable of giving that result. So what is the value of jnana? 0. And similarly, yoga, what we call as ashtanga yoga, has element of bhakti. One has to worship Krishna. Let's say it gives some result, 3. But bhakti alone is capable of giving that result without the element of yoga, which means yoga is, y is also 0. So it is just like, karma is like the tablet with just the base and not the active ingredient. Jnana is like the capsule with just the base and no active ingredient. And yoga is like, intravenous injection with probably just the base liquid with no active ingredient. The active ingredient is bhakti. So, but sometimes without the need for the base, whether it's in the form of a capsule or a tablet, that maybe for children who cannot consume that tablet, I think for small babies, directly the active ingredient can also be administered through the mouth, right? Isn't it true? I don't know, you are doctors, you might know. Because
Prabhuji,
small,
even though the bhakti is an independent process, there are certain characteristics which can facilitate the bhakti, like those who are already following Vedic rules and regulations. So are those characters, they don't facilitate the person to take up bhakti?
well, having taken up to bhakti, certain things, of course, this is a whole new topic. We will touch that topic, Mataji. Just give me 1 minute, I'll come back to that topic. Now the point we are trying to discuss is, as Shyam Mohan Prabhu asked this question, what is the meaning of Shemam na Vindanti Vinaya Darpanam? So what it means is, none of these practitioners of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga can achieve perfection of achieving their goal without actually accepting a personal form of the Lord, worshiping that personal form of the Lord. That is the meaning. So therefore, in bona fide descriptions of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga in the scriptures, there is a description of personal Lord who is supposed to be worshipped by them, along with their practice of the other limbs of Jnana and Ashtanga or Karma, like that. That is the meaning. That is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also. Avajananti mam muda manushim tanumashritam param bhava majananto mamabhuta maheshwaram, he says. So when I appear in a human form, people do not understand me and they do not accept me, right? And then what is and they think that I am another ordinary human being only. So parambhava majananto, they do not understand my superior position. Mama bhuta maheshwaram, that I am the supreme lord of all the living entities. They do not understand. So if they do not understand and worship Krishna in that particular way, then what happens? Krishna says, Mogasha, Moga Karmano, Moga Jnana Vichetasa, Rakshasim, Asurim, Cheva, Prakritim, Mohinim, Shrita. Right? Which chapter of Bhagavad Gita these two verses come? Anyone knows?
15th chapter.
No.
Chapter 3.
No. Which chapter?
9, I think. 9.
Huh?
7.
7th chapter. Yeah. 7th chapter. This verse comes. Right? So, so Krishna says, Mogasha, Moga Karmano, Moga Jnana Vichetasa. He says, if someone does not accept me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then his practice of Jnana Yoga will not bestow the result of liberation. His practice of Karma Yoga will not bestow the result of either Swarga or for a Sakama Karma Yogi, or purification of heart for the Nishkama Karma Yogi. And it will not bestow the result of yoga, which is liberation. So therefore, the point is that none of the Vedic paths which are properly prescribed in the Vedic literatures, all those paths have bhakti as an element. There is no path which has bhakti not as an element, because such a path will not give any result, because that, you know, do pharmacies sell dummy tablets also without the active ingredients for some reason? Maybe, I don't know, maybe placebo tablets. Do they really sell placebo tablets? I don't know. You have any idea? Do pharmacies sell tablets without the active ingredients?
No,
Sometimes. No, right?
no.
So the Vedic scriptures are like the pharmacy. So for different ailments, so different people have different desires. So why would they sell dummy tablets which will take all of your time? You will very carefully practice and it will not give any result at all, right? So therefore, all the Vedic paths, whether properly prescribed Vedic paths, Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, they all have bhakti as an element. So yeah, is that all right, Shamantu?
Yes, Prabhu. And
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
Prabhuji, you were saying that can bhakti be directly given to the children? So can you elaborate that a little more?
No, not. I didn't tell about bhakti, Mataji. I was just talking about paracetamol tablet. If a
Active
child
ingredient. You said active
ingredient.
ingredient. Yeah, active ingredient can be directly given to the children.
That was just an example I was giving. I didn't mean to say that directly you can give bhakti to children. I mean, you can probably. That's what we already do. But I was not trying to draw that parallel about giving bhakti directly to children. I was just telling that in some cases, even without the need for a carrier, you can directly give the active ingredient. In that sense, I was telling. Okay. Okay, I forgot what was the context. Is that okay, Shaman? Anything else you wanted to add or ask?
No, Prabhuji, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other question regarding this discussion that we have been about the yoga ladder, or about the explanation of this progression that is described by um, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur or Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan. Any questions or comments, discussion points?
So, Haribal Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
So, if we say that bhakti is the active ingredient in each of the yoga systems, that means then what is the difference between just Nishkam Karma Yoga and or Ashtanga Yoga and Mishrit Bhakti? That means Karma Mishrit Bhakti or Jnana Mishrit Bhakti. We know that Bhakti is the active ingredient. Then what is the difference between the Jnani, the Karmi, the Nishkama Karmi, and the Mishrit Bhakta?
Okay, good question, Prabhu. We will discuss that. Okay, so there is first thing is that a karma yogi, let's say Nishkama karma yogi only. Okay, so a karma yogi is he performs the elements of karma. Karma means varnashrama duties, and it has the element of bhakti, which is a secondary limb, which means his amount of bhakti is very meager. And because his amount of bhakti is very meager, his aspiration will also be very, you can say like very weak aspiration. So at the most, he will want, he will appreciate impersonal liberation. Because in order to appreciate a personal abode, the amount of bhakti should be very strong. Okay. So now, if he performs karma mishra bhakti, so in karma mishra bhakti, bhakti becomes the primary ingredient, and that bhakti is slightly tinged with some karma. He may be little bit attracted to some karma kandiya rituals, not karma kandiya rituals, but karma rituals and things like that, but primarily bhakti. So what is the meaning of bhakti being very primary? It means his goal also is more evolved. So what will he aspire for? He will, because bhakti is primary, therefore he will aspire for Vaikunta. Okay. But not prema. Okay. This is in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, this is called as Sukha Aishwarya Uttara Mukti, where the person goes to Vaikunta, but he does not experience Krishna Prema. So this is attained by Karma Mishra Bhaktas who have predominant bhakti and very little karma, but it is tinged with some karma. Okay. Then the same with Jnana Yogis. So they have Jnana as the primary limb and bhakti as a supporting limb, secondary limb. So such people also aspire, because the bhakti element is weak, they cannot appreciate personal abode, attainment of personal abode, establishing personal relationship. It's not very appealing to them. So they aspire for impersonal liberation. Okay. Whereas what we call as Jnana Mishra Bhakta, okay, they have bhakti as the primary ingredient, whereas Jnana as the secondary ingredient. So their primary bhakti is somehow tinged or affected by some element of Jnana. So such people attain, but they are little more evolved than Karma Mishra Bhaktas. So they will also go to Vaikunta. Okay. And they experience what is called as Shantarati. So Shantarati means they can reach till the stage of Bhava, but they will not attain Prema because it is not pure Bhakti. So they cannot attain Prema. Similarly, Ashtanga Yogis, they have yoga as the primary limb.
Yeah,
but
last ka nahi samjha,
bhakti-
Prabhuji.
what Mataji?
I could not understand the part last part
Last
bhava
part.
bhakti. Yeah. Can
Yeah.
you please?
So because they don't have pure bhakti, but still they predominantly worship the Supreme Lord, they can go till Vaikunta and they can reach till the stage of bhava, but they cannot attain prema, because only by prema you can attain pure bhakti and a pure relationship with Krishna. So such Jnana Mishra Bhaktas, they attain what is called as Shanta Rati. Rati means bhava. Is it okay, Mataji?
Okay, Prabhuji. Okay.
And then Ashtanga yogis, they have Ashtanga yoga as the primary limb and bhakti as the secondary limb. Okay. So such people also aspire for impersonal liberation. Okay, at the most, because bhakti is very weak, so therefore they cannot value a personal abode and a relationship with Krishna much. And similarly, there are Yoga Mishra Bhaktas. So Yoga Mishra Bhaktas have bhakti as the primary limb and yoga as the secondary limb. So such people also, similar to Jnana Mishra Bhaktas, they can attain up to Vaikunta, and in Vaikunta they attain Shantarati. So therefore, these Karma Mishra Bhaktas, Jnana Mishra Bhaktas and Yoga Mishra Bhaktas, they have bhakti is their primary limb. They are predominant devotees, but that predominant bhakti is little bit tinged with some amount of karma or jnana or yoga. Whereas this karma yogis, jnana yogis and ashtanga yogis, they are predominantly, they have karma jnana yoga. They have some bhakti which acts as the active ingredient to give them the fruits of their action, which in all these three cases is actually impersonal liberation. Like that. Is that okay, Prabhu? Shamlal Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. The goal is different. The
Yeah, the
final destination differs.
destination
Yes,
differs and their practice also
will differ.
will differ. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Very well.
Okay. Anything else anyone would like to add before we move ahead?
Prabhuji, what is difference between Karma Kanda and Sakam Karma Yoga?
Okay. In Karma Kanda, there may be some element of demigod worship. There may be non-acceptance or of Krishna to be the supreme. Maybe. I mean, this is what I have heard, but even though I don't exactly, I have not seen in the Shastras either Prabhupada or Vishnu Chakravarti or Baldev Bhushan explicitly differentiate between Sakama Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda. They don't seem to differentiate it like that. But I have heard it from other devotees that Karma Kanda involves demigod worship, whereas Sakama Karma Yoga involves only worship of Vishnu, like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else before we move ahead? Okay. So now we have been discussing, this is just a primer. This understanding will help when we move ahead to the later chapters. It will become a little more clear. So, but for now, we have been discussing about Arjuna's doubts, and Arjuna is telling second reason that he is giving that he will not fight is that I will not get enjoyment. I will not be able to enjoy, right? So he says, Nacha Shreyo nu pashyami hatva swajana mahave, nakankshe vijayam Krishna nacharagyam sukanicha. My dear Krishna, I do not see any good result coming after killing my own people, because with whom will I enjoy? Huh? Therefore, I do not desire victory, kingdom, or happiness. Right? So here, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, I do not see any benefit in killing in this manner. The scriptures state beneficial results for the persons killed. So he says, Parashara Smriti says, Dvavimau Purushau Loke Surya Mandala Bedinau. Padivrad Yoga Yuktascha Ranech Abhimuke Hataha. So here Arjuna is telling that, look, the Dharma Shastras say that two kinds of people attain the higher destination of entering into the sun planet. Sun planet is like a type of Swarga. Surya Mandala Bedino, two categories of people. Who? Parivrad Yoga Yuktascha. He says that a sannyasi who is engaged in yoga, and Ranecha Abhimuke Hataha, or the warrior who dies facing the enemy in the battlefield. So he says that if I fight and if I kill them, then they will go to a higher destination. But it does not speak about a person who fights and does not die on the battlefield, but he is victorious. So this is a very flawed logic that Arjuna is presenting, and we should understand that he was very much disturbed. In a disturbed state of mind, these kind of flawed logic can come. You know, he's not using a very sound logic, right? So basically, when you say when a person who dies on the battlefield is glorified, it automatic, the glorification is for a qualified person fighting on the battlefield. It is not just it has nothing to do with dying or living in one sense. Whether he dies or lives, he gains piety. If a Kshatriya fights valorously on a dharmic battle, if he dies also he gets piety. If he wins the battlefield and survives also, he gets the same piety. So therefore he is presenting flawed logic because he is very emotionally affected. Arjuna is speaking like this. He says, however, there is no piety for the person engaged in the killing. Thus, it is better that I die rather than kill. This is definitely a flawed logic. This is not true. This is simply not true. This is not a true statement, even according to the Dharma Shastras. But Krishna may say, oh, but by fighting, you will gain tangible results in the form of kingdom and fame. You will gain kingdom, you will gain fame. He says, oh, but I do not desire this victory, kingdom, or happiness, because with whom am I going to enjoy all these things? Right? Then, okay, there is some. Okay, so there is a question here in the chat box. Dharmic battle has a good and a bad side, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Does it mean even warriors of the bad side will attain the sun planet? Well, as long as they for particular, see, these are how it is determined. What determines that? Is it like a wholesale whoever's side had sided with Duryodhana, they were all going to get sinful reactions for fighting on the battlefield? Is it like that? I don't think so. It is not as simple as that. For that, you need to read the Dharma Shastras. I have not personally studied the Dharma Shastras, so I cannot comment on that. Is it that if one person is, if the main king is adharmic and whoever sides with him and fights with him, all of them are adharmic? Is it like that? I don't think so. I don't think it's as simplistic as that. There must be more details to it. So I'm not very sure, but definitely there must be more details to it. It's not as simplistic as that. And it's not that in any battle, if one side is good and the other side is adharmic, it is not like that. There could be two dharmic kings also fighting for gaining the kingdom. So it is not necessarily like that, right? Okay. So then he continues. Kim no rajyena govinda kim bhogairjivitena va yeshamarte kankshitam no rajyam bhoga sukani cha तयिमेव स्थिता युद्धे प्राणां त्यक्त्वा धनानि च आचार्य पितरः पुत्रास्तथैव च पितामहाः मातुलश्वशुरा पौत्राः शाला सम्बन्धिनस्तथा एतान्न हन्तुमिच्छामि घ्नतोऽपि मधुसूदन अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य हेतोः किं नो मही कृते निहत्य धार्तराष्ट्रान्नः का प्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन. So he says, Kim no rajyena, what is the use of having this kingdom? Kim bhogair jivitenava, what is the use of enjoyment or even living? Yesham arte naha kankshitam, those for whom we are desiring rajyam, this kingdom, bhoga, sukani, those for whom we desire kingdom, enjoyment and happiness, who are they? There were acharyas, pitara, putras, tataiva cha pitama, teachers, fathers, sons and grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-laws, grandsons, brothers-in-laws and relatives. Te ime avastita yuddhe, they are standing on the battlefield. Pranam tyaktva dhananicha, and they are risking their lives and their wealth. Look what is at stake for me, Krishna. Do you mean that I should kill my relatives and take the kingdom? What is at stake? What is this? Huh? This is such a such an unfair choice that life has given to me, right? On one side, if I choose to not kill them, I may be killed on the battlefield. If I choose to not fight with them, then I will not have any kingdom to live, and they may perpetually remain my enemies only. And if I fight and kill them, then I will not have anyone else with whom I can enjoy this kingdom. So how cruel is this life that I don't have a reasonable choice? None of the choice, it's like sitting on a multiple choice, writing a multiple choice paper where none of the choices seem to be right for every single question. So you are really confused, what should I write? Like that. So eta na hantum ichchami gnatopi, even if they kill me, actually I don't desire to kill them. Trailokya rajyasya hetu api, even if in return, if I get the sovereignty over the three worlds, kim nu mahikrite, what to speak of this earth, even if I gain sovereignty over the three worlds, I don't wish to fight and kill them. O Janardana, naha ka priti syat dhartarashtra nihatya, what happiness will I achieve after killing Dhritarashtra? So basically he is speaking on this platform of, where is my happiness? I can't be happy. That is the point that he is trying to make, right? So this is the second reason that he gives, that I cannot be happy, like that. Any quick comments, discussion points before we move ahead to the next reason that he is going to give is fear of sin. But before that, any point that you want to present? Okay, so we'll move ahead then. So now Arjuna, पापमेवाश्रयेदस्मान् हत्वैतान् आततायिनः तस्मान्नार्हा वयं हन्तुं धार्तराष्ट्रान् स्वबान्धवान् स्वजनं हि कथं हत्वा सुखिनः स्याम माधव. एतान् आततायिनः हत्वा, he says, by killing these aggressors, asmad papam eva ashrayat, we will only incur sin, he says. Tasmat, therefore, narha vayam hantum, therefore we should not kill them. We should not kill Dhartarashtran Swabhandavan. Therefore, we should not kill the sons of Dhritarashtra with their relatives. O Madhava, Katam Sukina Syama, how can we live happily? Swajanam Hatva, after killing our own relatives. So, two reasons he gives here. One is, first is fear of sins. He says that Papam Evashraya Dasmad Hatvaitan Atatayina. In killing these aggressors, we will incur only sin. So he is fear of sins. Second, he says, Sukinasyama, Katam Sukinasyama Madhava. How can we live happiness? So happiness. So these are the two reasons that he is presenting here. But one may say that this is from the okay, this is from Arthashastra. So Krishna is quoting from Arthashastra, and he says, Agnido Garadaschaiva Shastrapanir Dhanapaha Kshetradara Paharicha Hi Atatayinaha. He says, the arsonist means one who lights fire to your house, one who poisons, one who attacks with weapons, the thief, the stealer of property, and the stealer of one's wife are considered aggressors. If you see, the Kauravas had committed all these 6 types of aggression on the Pandavas. So this is Arthashastra. And also it is said, Atatayinam Ayantam Hanyad Eva Vicharayan Natatayi Vade Dosho Hantur Bhavati Kaschana. So the Arthashastra says, without consideration, one should kill the aggressors as there is no fault in killing them. So Manusmriti says. Thus, the scriptures prescribe killing in the case of aggressors. So Krishna may say, they are all Atatayis. So you can kill them. The Shastras recommend killing of Atatayis. Now Arjuna responds with this verse. He says, killing them, we will remain living, but we will be sinful, he says. The above instructions are from Arthashastra, but those instructions are weaker than those from Dharmashastra. So Arjuna, he thinks, oh Krishna, what is wrong with you? Why are you quoting this lower Arthashastra? See, I am quoting from Dharmashastra. You are telling that Atatai should be killed. Yes, that's what the Arthashastra says. But the Dharmashastras say that even Atatai should not be killed because you will incur sin. So Yagyavalkya says, Smrityor Virode Nyayastu Balavan Vyavaharatah Arthashastrat tu Balavan Dharmashastram iti stitihi. So here he says, it is established that where there is conflict of rules in 2 Smriti statements, reasoning must prevail in choosing the correct rule. However, in reasoning, the rules of Dharmashastras are stronger than those of Arthashastra. So if there are 2 conflicting opinions presented by Dharmashastra and Arthashastra, you should always choose the conclusions of the Dharmashastra because the Dharmashastra is higher than Arthashastra. That's what he says. So therefore here Arjuna says, look, yes, It is true that the Arthashastras say that the aggressors should be killed, but Dharmashastras prohibits that, he says. Thus, even though they are aggressors, they are also acharyas, right? Dronacharya, Kripacharya. We cannot also be happy in this life. Thus, he says, how can we be happy in this life having killed our own people? So, if we kill our own people, how can we be happy? Like that, he presents from the Dharma Shastra to refute the argument that Krishna is presenting based on Artha Shastra. Like that. Okay. Any quick comments, discussion points on this before we move ahead? Okay, we'll move ahead then. Now, the last reason that he is going to give to not fight is destruction of family traditions. Okay, so we still have 3 minutes time. Maybe one verse we could do, and then we will take the rest of the verses next week. Okay, so he says, यद्यप्येतेन पश्यन्ति लोभोपहत चेतसः कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं मित्रद्रोहे च पातकं कथं न ज्ञेयमस्माभिः पापादस्मान् निवर्तितुं कुलक्षयकृतं दोषं प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन. So he says, yadyapi ete, even if these people, lobha upahata chetasaha, even if these people who are overcome by greed, na pashyanti, if they do not see kulakshaya kritam dosham, they may not see being overcome by greed. These people may not see the fault of destroying the family. Kulakshaya kritam dosham. Mitra drohe cha patakam. And they may not see the sin in killing friends. So they may not see. Katam na asmabihi, but should we not? Kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashyadbir. But we do see the fault in destroying the family. So therefore, should we not? Asmat papa nivartitum geyam. Should we not know how to withdraw from the sin? So their eyes may be covered by greed. So they are not seeing the fault of destroying family and how the other family members will suffer. They are not able to think about it because their eyes are covered by greed. But we know it. We know the problem. So should we not be withdrawing from the sin of destroying the family members? This is the argument that Arjuna is giving. They don't know, but we should be knowing, right? So why does this opposing side want to fight then? So Krishna is asking, oh Arjuna, if just like they are your relatives, you are also their relatives. You are also their relative. Why they are not thinking like the way you are thinking? So they should also not fight, right? If all of them are your relatives, then you all are also their relatives. The way you are thinking, why are the Kauravas not thinking? Why is Dronacharya not thinking? Why is Bhishmadev not thinking? Why are they ready to fight here? He says, oh, maybe their eyes are covered by greed. Because of being overcome by greed, they are not able to see the fault of destroying one's own family. But we are able to see. Should we also act in such an act with such lack of discrimination and go and fight with them? So he answers with this verse, right? So he says, they overcome by greed do not see any fault in destroying the family or any sin in killing friends. They don't see. But should we also do it? That's what he's telling. Okay, so we will pause here and continue this discussion next Friday. So thank you all very much for your patient listening and your participation also. So you all have a nice weekend, and we will meet on the week ahead also, and we will meet next Friday. So thank you all very much. शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, शिल विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर पाद की जय, श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय.
Thank you, Prabhu.